Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. This is today's church. Of course, if you've been listening to your social media handles, watching videos and all that, you will have known what is trending presently. TB Joshua. Was he a saint or was he a sinner? Towards the end of last year, Apostle Arome Osai came up with a startling prophecy. As at that time, it was not startling enough. People didn't take him that serious. He said that from January, God will begin to judge his own people. Then he went further. He explained that there will be exposures of all sorts of malfeasances taking place in the body of Christ. All sorts of corruption and pollution taking place, that there will be a lot of exposure. It didn't take long after the prophecy before we began to hear stories about Hubert Angel. That came and went suddenly. Then we started hearing stories about T.D. Jakes, Bishop T.D. Jakes. I'm sure you heard the story. That came and went, and now BBC came up with something more damaging, something more disastrous, a can of worms, as it were, on Temitope Balogun Joshua, otherwise known as T.B. Joshua. Who is T.B. Joshua? T.B. Joshua is a legendary philanthropist. His philanthropy work spans different continents of the world. He's taken the message of love and sacrifice, giving to different poor people, different parts of the world. He's recognized globally as a giving icon, a philanthropist in every sense of the word. Who is T.B. Joshua? In 2011, Forbes magazine named him one of the richest pastors to come out of Africa. Who is T.B. Joshua? T.B. Joshua, when he was alive, was a host to a number of African presidents, especially African celebrities, Nollywood stars, football merchants, and all that. For instance, T.B. Joshua hosted Daniel Amokachi, who went there for miraculous healing of his knee. T.B. Joshua also hosted Jim Ike, a Nollywood icon, who went there for some personal reasons. Now, T.B. Joshua is also known, or was also known as a fortune teller or a prophet of future events. One of the things he said, which didn't really happen, was that he said when they were asking him about the American presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, he said, "I saw a woman in the White House." That was what he said. Well, a woman didn't occupy the White House. It was Donald Trump, who is a man, that occupied the White House at that point in time. So, but other than that, and a few other gaffes, he was actually a prophet of the future events. But while he lived, it was not all uhuru. There were controversies while he was alive. For instance, Chris Okotie spoke strongly against him, addressed press conferences to attack him, to attack his work, attack what he was doing, and to say that, in fact, he called him in some of his conferences that he was a son of the devil, a son of Lucifer. Now, Tunde Bakare does not usually agree with Chris Okotie, but on this score, both agree. Tunde Bakare also took T.B. Joshua to the cleaners. Then we also have Bishop Mike Okonkwo, who spoke strongly against T.B. Joshua. Then we also have Apostle General Anselm Madubuko, who spoke strongly against T.B. Joshua. As a matter of fact, when T.B. Joshua applied to join CAN and PFN, he was rejected. Why? They said, "When did you get born again? How did you get born again? What was his testimony?" He couldn't answer that. He had no story, he has no explanation of how he got born again. And they were of the opinion that if you don't know how you got born again, you cannot be a minister of the gospel. So he was rejected by PFN as well as CAN, though on his death, CAN issued a statement. But while he was alive, CAN distanced itself from him And so did a lot of other ministers. People like Bishop David Oyedepo distanced himself from him. People like Pastor E.A. Adeboye distanced himself from him. People like W.F. Kumuyi distanced himself from him. Even Pastor Chris Oyahilome, that initially tried to warm up to him, with time gradually pulled back. So many people attacked him. So why am I saying this? Because I hear a lot of people saying today, why are they talking? Why is BBC releasing this? When he was alive, nobody talked to. I said, no, people were talking. You were not listening, but people were talking. People actually spoke. And that's not just that. In 1995, Oke Ogunjiofor, a foremost Nollywood producer, produced a movie. He titled it Brotherhood of Darkness. That movie was an exposure of what goes on in Synagogue Church of All Nations. As a matter of fact, the message was not lost on TB Joshua himself. The stories have it that he banned the movie, banned members of his church from buying the movie or watching it. If he didn't ban them, maybe the movie would not have been that popular. But he banned them from watching it, banned them from buying it. Why? Because it exposed some things that goes on in the church. That's not all. In 2012, the Cameroonian government issued a statement. They called it the devil in the house. They banned Synagogue Church of All Nations within the territory of Cameroon. They said the man was diabolical and that his testimony was unclear. And by issuing a statement titled The Devil in the House, the Cameroonian government banned Synagogue Church of All Nations from operating within the confines of the country, Cameroon. But that's not all. Even before the Cameroonian government acted, in the late 1990s, there was a man named Kola Olawuyi. Kola Olawuyi was an investigative journalist. He had a program on air, a radio program called Nka Mbe. Now, in that program, he used to feature a number of backroom staff and ex-devotees of Synagogue Church of All Nations who were, invited to talk about their experiences working under TB Joshua. Most of the allegations that BBC is talking about today were unearthed at that point in time. So as early as the late 1990s, these allegations were already well established and well known. But yet, there was no desisting from the evil. In 2018, a former devotee, a former disciple named Bisola Johnson wrote a 409-page book titled The TB Joshua I Know. The TB Joshua I Know. In that book, she x-rayed a whole lot of nonsense that goes on in the church, a whole lot of unprintable things that goes on in the church. So when people say that nobody was talking when he was alive, it's a blatant lie. People were talking. Maybe you were not paying attention, but people were talking. People were seriously talking to the high heavens. But people were not paying attention. Maybe. I give it to you that possibly you are nonchalant about it. Now, you want to use that to defend him? No. Let's think of something more serious. So, this is the TB Joshua that the world knows. You find that BBC released a documentary, 150-minute documentary, yesterday, Monday, the 8th day of January 2024. And a lot of people had risen up in defense of TB Joshua. Some of the people who rose up in his defense are people who benefited from him in one way or the other. Some of the people who rose up in his defense are people who are of his tribe, who feel that they are maligning their tribe and therefore felt an obligation to defend their tribe. Some of the people who rose up in his defense are devotees of his ministry. But in addition to them, we find people like Femi Fani Kayode, who spoke and called TB Joshua my brother and my friend and said BBC cannot dent his image. We find people like Dele Momodu, who spoke and said a similar thing, praising him, eulogizing him. And of course, nobody in his right senses will argue against the philanthropic gestures of TB Joshua. It was legendary in every way. Even though some people will say, well, why was he taking cameras to record it? Jesus said, let not your right hand know what your left hand is doing. If you are giving a gift to people or you are giving offering to people, let people not know what you are doing. That was Jesus' statement. But other than that, people think that his giving was legendary. Now, BBC interviewed 25 different people. 25 people from UK, US, Germany, Ghana, Namibia, South Africa, Nigeria. 25 people who had direct first-hand experiences with TB Joshua. Now, what were they accusing him of? 5 major things. Violent sexual assaults and rape. Violent sexual assaults and rape. Number 2, physical abuse and deprivation of sleep. Physical abuse and deprivation. Sometimes they were beaten with whips. They were beaten with whips. That's what they said. Number 3, fabricated miracles. Some of the miracles were doctored. They were manipulated. They were engineered. People were paid to come and give fake testimony. Number 4, trauma. And of course, these are very grave allegations. Now, it is very common to accuse a pastor of sexual misconduct. But what of occultic involvement? One of the ladies said her work was to identify virgins who will sleep with TB Joshua, and then TB Joshua will collect their blood, the blood of their virginity, and use it for miracle working. These allegations have been persisting from the 1990s till date. So what BBC did was simply to bring it back alive. It's not as if they manufactured any new thing. Now, having said that, you begin to ask, did the BBC people talk to SCOAN, that's the Synagogue Church of All Nations? They did. They tried to. But what was the initial reply? The initial reply was, these kind of allegations have been made before, but without substantiation. So there was no substance to it as at that time. Now, that does not imply that these allegations are dead or a denial of the allegations. So, while he was alive, a book was written. While he was alive, a television movie was produced, Brotherhood of Darkness. While he was alive, a radio program aired. And while he was alive, there were press conferences by victims who said all sorts of things. So don't tell me this BBC documentary is an afterthought. No, don't tell me it's aimed at targeting Mrs. Evelyn. No, it has nothing to do with it. Let us face facts. And it's on this note I'll draw the curtain on today's show. Watch our program, subscribe, like, comment, and then above all, there's a promo on our books. Look at it and see whether you can go to Amazon.com and order for these books. They will build you up. God bless you.
Does God want his children to prosper and be healthy? The answer is yes. Is it possible to be genuinely rich without cheating others, cutting corners, or involving blood oaths and sacrifices? Again, the answer is yes. Find out revolutionary truths from this explosive book and get started on your biblical pathway to greatness and wealth. Begin today to enjoy God's financial system. Available on Amazon.com.
Is love enough to sustain marriage or even a relationship? If love and money are available, does that guarantee a blissful marriage? Why does it always happen that the ugly past rears its ugly head up to destroy the pleasant present? Find out why love is not enough in this fast-reading thriller, Love is Not Enough. Available on Amazon.com.
Think for a moment, what is the craziest wedding you have ever witnessed? A dwarf marrying a giant. A cripple marrying a blind person. A very beautiful lady wedding a decorated horse. This novel, The Craziest Wedding Ever, is about a wedding that is crazier than all those put together. Find out, in this fascinating true life story, what makes this, the craziest wedding ever. Available on Amazon. For all inquiries, call any of these numbers: 234-80-34637-680, 234-80-930-29079, 234-81-273343992, broadlook@gmail.com.